On today's episode of Star Wars Legends Lore, we look at 5 ways the Galactic Empire could have won the Battle of Endor. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Legends Lore video. The Empire's loss at the Battle of Endor was the definitive moment in the Galactic Civil War. However, from an Imperial perspective, it was totally preventable. In today's video, we'll discuss 5 ways that the Galactic Empire could have beat the Rebel Alliance in space. Before getting into the content, I just want to remind you guys that at the end of today's video, I will be giving away another EckhartsLadder t-shirt. I'll also be revealing the winner for the last video. If you guys want further chances to win, make sure to follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and of course check out my second channel. I'm also giving away a shirt in the most recent video there. With that being said, let's start with the 5 ways the Empire could have won the battle. We'll go through the list in no particular order. The first way they could have won is through sheer overwhelming force. If you remember, the Emperor purposefully gave away plans for the Death Star 2. He knew the Rebel Alliance would attack. In response, he summoned a fleet which included 1 Super Star Destroyer, a couple of battleships, and around 30 or so regular Star Destroyers. However, in both Legends and canon, the Empire certainly had more Star Destroyers than those present at the battle. Had the Emperor called over, say, twice as many ships as those present at the battle, they likely would have won just through sheer overwhelming force. Now, I believe that there was some worry that the rebels would have noticed the ship movement had more ships been brought to Endor. Still, I think it would have been worth it. Even a second smaller dreadnought or a couple more battle cruisers would have made a significant difference. The crucial turning point in the battle at space, in my opinion, was the destruction of the Executor. With a few more really high value targets, I think the Empire could have survived quite a bit longer. I think a good option would have been to have ships stationed in nearby systems, just a hyperspace jump away, along with interdictor cruisers. Once the rebels jump to the Death Star, every other Imperial force joins the battle. The Rebel fleet was interesting and it was well comprised, but had the Empire really brought their true firepower to bear, they wouldn't have had a chance. That's the first way. However, even that method kind of brings up some of the other issues with the Imperial's naval strategy and their battle at Endor. The second way the Empire could have won is through the use of proper aggressive military doctrine. Palpatine was totally out of his mind when he allowed the rebels to attack the Death Star undefended. Yes, the Imperial fleet was there, but they were out of range and more just for show and to keep the rebels from running away. Some very small adjustments could have turned the tide of battle. The Empire could have protected the weak areas of the Death Star with their main Star Destroyer forces. Otherwise, they had the upper hand on the Rebel Alliance, certainly in terms of firepower, and they should have attacked them directly instead of sitting back and letting the Death Star do everything. Really, because of Palpatine's arrogance and lack of vision, the Empire did the worst thing possible here, allowing Rebel forces to dominate the battle in space. The Empire's tactical mistakes, I think, could make an entire video itself. Suffice to say, had a competent admiral or military leader like Thrawn been leading the Empire's forces, the Alliance wouldn't have stood a chance. The next 2 points are both about fleet composition and try to remedy a situation that the Empire faced. Basically, the Rebel Alliance had absolute space superiority on a starfighter level. X-Wings, A-Wings, Y-Wings, and B-Wings were basically able to operate unmolested, taking down enemy capital ships and starfighters while not losing a crazy amount of fighters. Much of this comes from Imperial design philosophy. The Imperial II class Star Destroyer, for instance, didn't make use of point defense weapon systems. Although the Imperial I Star Destroyer did, those were only about half the ships at the battle. The first way the Empire could have protected against this weakness, and the third way they could have won overall, was through the use of smaller ships. The Empire didn't use a lot of anything that was smaller or faster than a Star Destroyer. Something like a Corvette, even a Nebulon B frigate, would have been extremely useful for taking out enemy starfighters. At this point in galactic history, the Empire made use of ships like this regularly. The Nebulon B, for example, was actually designed by the Empire primarily as an anti-starfighter vessel. The rebels made heavy use of small corvettes, frigates, and gunboats, which helped them take down the thousands of TIE fighters and TIE interceptors fielded by the Empire. Had the Empire also done something similar, they could have really helped protect their larger ships, including their Executor class Super Star Destroyer. It also would have been fairly easy to sneak some smaller ships over to Endor. They don't have the same kind of presence that an Imperial Star Destroyer does, and they would have went a long way in shoring up the greatest weakness of the Imperial Navy, or at least the fleet at Endor. The second way the Empire could have protected against starfighters, and the fourth way they could have won the battle at Endor overall, was through better starfighters. We see at Endor that the Empire primarily used TIE fighters and TIE interceptors. We also know in Legends that there also was a single squadron at least of TIE defenders. However, other than that, it's mostly the basic starfighters that were there. These ships were easily overpowered by the much better starfighters of the Rebel Alliance. What's more, the Empire basically sent them off, at least at the beginning of the battle, without capital ship support. That means that not only were they taking fire from other starfighters, but also from the numerous small cruisers used by the Alliance. There's a few things I would do here. First, I would include more squadrons of experimental starfighters. I'm talking TIE Avengers, TIE Defenders. I mean, this is the most important battle of the war. You should be sparing no expense. Second, I would include more bombers or heavy munitions ships. TIE fighters and TIE interceptors really aren't made for taking on capital ships, when really it's those Nebulon Bs and those CR-90s which are inflicting a lot of damage. Finally, I would support the ship with at the very least some light cruisers or corvettes. These would help protect against both other starfighters and enemy cruisers. I understand not wanting to be hit by the Death Star laser, but really the bigger issue here was Palpatine's arrogance and wanting to put on a grand show for Luke Skywalker. Speaking of, the fifth way the Empire could have won the Battle of Endor is through proper management of the Death Star, and this is assuming that there's no strange IG-88 stuff going on. Anyway, I think it was really smart that Palpatine waited until the Alliance was in range to start actually showing that the Death Star was active. However, he placed too much faith in his troops on the ground, assuming that the shield generator would not go down. He should have more aggressively combated the rebel forces while also safeguarding his battle station, especially given that it was in a relatively vulnerable state. He should have had Star Destroyers and other ships positioned around the areas of the Death Star where the superstructure was missing. Because he didn't do so, the only way that the Empire could react to the shield going down was by trying to chase the rebels through the Death Star, which wasn't very successful. Protection of the station itself would have been enough to win the battle. It was very quickly whittling down the rebels' forces, with Mon Calamari ships being blown up left to right. In a deleted scene, we also see the Emperor order the destruction of Endor. I don't think that was ever canon, however, it was a waste of the Death Star's resources. They could always destroy the planet later. Really, the Emperor was too dedicated to making a show for Luke, trying to turn him to the dark side, when really, he should have been more worried about winning the battle. Even if Luke had been turned, the Death Star would have been destroyed nonetheless. To summarize, I see 5 real ways the Empire could have won the Battle of Endor, and likely could have won it easily. The first is through even more overwhelming force. In Legends, the Empire was said to have tens of thousands of Star Destroyers, although admittedly, that doesn't necessarily match what we see with the EU. Could they not have sent a dozen or more to the battle? I think that really would have helped. Second, there were serious tactical errors at the battle caused primarily by the Emperor's arrogance. Had those been protected against, the rebels would have lost. Third, the rebels had a serious starfighter advantage. This allowed them to take out capital ships and dominate the skies. Had the Empire made use of small anti-fighter frigates, corvettes, and gunships, they likely would have nullified any advantage on the rebel side, and they probably could have won the battle. They could have also used the fourth method, which was bringing in better starfighters, more bombers, and better supporting the starfighters that were there. Finally, we have better use and support of the Death Star. The Death Star was incredibly vulnerable once the shield was down. The Empire should have protected against this somewhat. They could have placed some Golan defense platforms near the opening in the superstructure, or even just some Star Destroyers. Either would have likely made a great difference. Instead, once the shield was down, Imperial starfighters had to chase their superior rebel counterparts through the Death Star, which really had no effect. Those are 5 ways the Galactic Empire and Palpatine could have won the battle at Endor. Certainly there are others, however, I think that these are the main ones. However, let me know your perspective. Do you think that the Alliance was destined to win no matter what, that the Empire was totally flawed, or that I basically got it right on the money? Now, however, it's time to talk about free stuff. Through random selection, the winner of yesterday's t-shirt is Dr. Pibb. Doc, if you're not already, get in contact with my moderators on Discord, send me a message on Twitter, or even an email. We can get that shirt sent out to you. Now, I am giving away another t-shirt for today's episode. The rules are similar. All you have to do is be subscribed to the channel, like the video, and tell me what games you'd like to see me play on my second channel. Again, I'll pick a random winner who I'll reveal at the end of next episode. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. As always, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.